Last week, I filmed a video about the LA Clippers and the Kawhi Leonard situation, and then I got an update on my phone a few days later saying Kawhi Leonard is out indefinitely with right knee inflammation, and there's no timetable for his return. I was already nervous of something like this happening after it was reported that he hadn't practiced with the team at all during training camp or any practice whatsoever since the NBA has been slowly ramping up to coming back. And with the season happening tomorrow, we have some things to talk about. The current depth chart of the LA Clippers looks like this. It's got James Harden at point guard, Norman Powell at the 2, Terrence Mann at the 3, Kawhi Leonard was going to play the 4 hypothetically, and then Ivica Zubac, I don't really know. I've mispronounced his name for years, at the 5. Derek Jones Jr., I think, is more likely to start at the 3 position than Terrence Mann, but maybe that's just me. What I'm going to say is that roster, if you take Kawhi Leonard off of it, is not making the play-in. Last year, I caught some flack from Clippers fans saying that the Clippers were not going to be a play-in team. They were going to be the 11th seed last year. I'm just not excited by this team at all. I think they're worse than they've been in previous years, and with a Western Conference that's only getting better, I feel like the Clippers are being left behind. And I was wrong. Definitely wrong, completely wrong. They ended up making the playoffs, obviously, as the 5th seed. But then they got soundly defeated by the Mavericks after a solid Game 1 win they had. Mavericks pretty much took care of them for the rest of the playoff series. And that was obviously due to Kawhi Leonard's injury, which we can talk about more later. But basically what I'm saying is I'm a prophet because I was a year ahead of the Clippers' downfall. And I'm not predicting it this year. I'm almost guaranteeing it. James Harden at his age is not able to carry a team the way he was when the Rockets were around. And even then, he needed another piece, which every star player needs a co-star, obviously. I'm not going to sit here and hate on prime James Harden. He was incredible. I mean, he was absolutely unstoppable in every sense of the word. But he is not that player anymore. We all know this. It's not like something that's debated anymore. He is not the same player he was 5 years ago. If you take Kawhi Leonard off this roster, the West is so competitive that I don't see a way in which they even make the play-in. I would take the Warriors over this team, and in a lot of ways, I'm nervous about the Warriors even making the play-in this year. And we've seen this before with Kawhi Leonard, out indefinitely, without a timetable. What does that tell you? It tells me that it's not 2 weeks, it's not 4 weeks, it's 2 months, it's 4 months. I don't think we see Kawhi Leonard on a basketball court before Christmas. That's just me, that's my prediction. I have no insider info, I know as much as y'all do. But based on Kawhi's injury history and how this injury has been built up over time, he was dealing with right knee inflammation during that playoff series last year with the Mavericks. It was the reason why he showed up for Team USA and then was told to go home and was replaced by Derek White. The reason behind that was due to this inflammation that no one can seem to decide what it actually is. Obviously, it's inflammation. What is it caused by? Do we have any information? It was very similar to the situation with the San Antonio Spurs where he just disappeared and stopped showing up and he had a knee contusion. For those of you that are not in the medical field, contusion means bruise. It's just a fancy word for bruise. It's a little bit worse, but it's essentially the same thing. He disappeared for 3 months off that San Antonio Spurs team to go see a doctor in New York and rehab his knee, even though we all know that it was much worse than a contusion. And we still don't really know what happened in that scenario. There was no real true answer. Kawhi Leonard has always been very private about his injury history, and this will be no different. We're not going to hear anything from Kawhi or Kawhi's camp at all until magically he's going to be on the court for the Clippers in like maybe November, December, that sort of time, and then he'll be playing for the Clippers. But I can't imagine a world in which he looks 100% anymore, which is why we got to start discussing how screwed the Clippers are realistically, because if you're a Clippers fan right now, I feel very sorry for you because you don't have your own pick until 2030. It is not even halfway through the decade yet, and you don't have your pick until 2030. You bought in on this team very hard with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, and I can't blame you. Every GM in the league would have done the same thing. You're telling me that you knew Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was going to be an MVP candidate? No, no one knew that. He was solid for you, but he was nothing insane. He was considered a role player, very much a Jordan Clarkson archetype type of player back then. So for me, you can't blame mismanagement in this situation because in a lot of ways, yes, you should have seen a lot of this coming. It's just a shitty situation. Like, the Clippers feel cursed in a way. This team is just not going to be good. They're just not going to be good. Will they win some games? Yes. Will they go on a 5 or 6 game winning streak and beat some good teams? Totally possible. But without Kawhi Leonard, this team is going to struggle into the play-in and lose or miss the play-in entirely. I don't see a scenario in which they're anywhere above the 7th seed. I mean, I would be shocked if they were the 7th or the 8th seed. And if I was betting money on it, I wouldn't put them any higher than that. But yes, I see a scenario in which they can make the play-in and then potentially maybe get a 7th or 8th seed in the playoffs. But I don't think that's happening unless Kawhi Leonard comes back, which we have no fucking idea whether that's going to happen or not. And to me, as a basketball fan who has watched Kawhi Leonard for over a decade now, I think I understand this series of events that's going to unfold here, and it's not going to look good for the Clippers. What Kawhi Leonard is going through is kind of unprecedented. There's a lot of series of injuries where he just doesn't articulate how he's feeling or how the rehab process is going. There's no open communication between him and the media. It's one day he's here and one day he's not. And I'm not saying that the fans deserve to know what's going on with your body at all times. That's not the case at all. If there are certain things you don't want to talk about because you feel like it could damage your career or legacy, I understand that if you're Kawhi Leonard. But I think the fans deserve at least a little bit of a prediction on when he's going to be back playing basketball. Indefinitely is not good enough. But the reason why it won't be anything but indefinitely is because I don't even think Kawhi Leonard knows when he's going to be able to play basketball again. There's that clip, which I'll put in here, of Paul George throwing Kawhi a lob, and people have been showing it all over Twitter lately. I'll play it here.
To George, 2-on-1. George throws it up. Leonard throws it down. Now those are two impressive plays from Kawhi Leonard, forcing Jason Kidd to call timeout.
And you can say, okay, you're overanalyzing, but there's 3 different scenarios in this situation for me. 1, he dunked it. He's Kawhi Leonard. He's just going to hang on the rim because the Mavericks called the timeout. 2, he was nervous about his knee getting down, and he was terrified of the idea of hurting himself more if he came right off that dunk. Or 3, he was relieved that he could actually get up and throw that alley-oop down and took a moment to reflect on that. Those are the 3 options. I'm taking number 2. I get that that's a little bit of revisionist history, but that's just how I perceived it. Even at the time, I remember that happening and thinking, that's strange. Like, you know what I mean? Like, healthy players don't do that. They're hype. Kawhi is shown to be animated at times when his team is playing well. They were playing well in that scenario, and there was not a single, even excited bone in Kawhi's body, as far as you could tell from the outside perspective. And something else that the Clippers need to really address, which they really can't because, again, they don't have their picks, is their bench. Their bench is just not going to cut it. Chris Dunn, an NBA player now, good defender, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you if Chris Dunn is going to be a difference maker for your team or not. He's really not going to be that big of a difference maker. You went out and got KPJ. You're trying to get young talent in the door. He looked really solid in preseason. People forget that he was a 19-point scorer for the Rockets at one point. He's also a piece of shit, and the Clippers have been known to show that they don't really care about that because you signed Josh Primo 2 years ago. We didn't forget that, at least I haven't. And Josh Primo, renowned piece of shit, on levels of Deshaun Watson, if you will. Not quite as bad, but we're not going to sit here and compare the two. KBJ, very similar situation, and I think Clippers fans are not exactly excited about him being on the roster either. It's very much a Miles Bridges situation with the Hornets, where it's like, yeah, you can be good and solid, but we're just going to sit here and pretend you didn't do that thing or those things. We're just all going to pretend that nothing is wrong. It's like what the Cleveland Browns have been doing with Deshaun Watson. Again, same situation where it's like, yeah, we're just going to pretend we didn't do that. Obviously, the Browns are in a much worse situation. Upon filming this video, I think he just destroyed his Achilles. And then you've got guys like Bones Highland, who I don't know is a real NBA player. He was great on the Nuggets for a little bit, but that was because he was given ample opportunity and then he couldn't seem to cooperate. And then last year, him and PJ Tucker were sent away from the team to reevaluate their personal commitment to the team or something like that. They were just being annoying locker room presence. If you're a guy that's like the 12th man on the roster, that's not great. That's not what you really want to see. They signed DJJ, which we miss you, Derek Jones, but is he a difference maker? In a lot of ways, yes, but in a lot of ways also no, because he's not going to give you the kind of production that Kawhi Leonard would, obviously, and he's going to be playing Kawhi Leonard's role. That's a bad way to put it. He's going to slot in for Kawhi Leonard when he's not playing, And that's just a extreme drop-off. Yes, Derrick Jones Jr. is a great defender. If you put him next to Kawhi, I think that's a very formidable defense if Kawhi's healthy, obviously, which is always the scary thing about it. He's a great piece for a contender. We obviously know that over here on the Mavericks, but they're not contenders. So where does that put you with a guy like Derrick Jones Jr.? Mo Bamba is your backup big, or Kai Jones. Kai Jones, I think, actually has quite a bit of potential as a player. Yes, he seemed to not be able to put the pieces together when he was on the Hornets, and then they cut him for being eccentric and weird, even though they have fucking Miles Bridges on their roster, but apparently Kai Jones was the issue. Nicholas Batum returned to the team. He's just loyal to them for whatever reason. And then you've got guys like Norm Powell, which I talked about earlier, Terrence Mann, who you would hope would have another jump this season, but you can't really be too sure. I think he's kind of what he is at this point. Amir Coffey, a guy that you're not depending on very much. Just guys that you just don't feel particularly great about as like breaking out into more than what they are. And that's what you need on a team like this if you want a chance to be a playoff team, especially if your star player is going to be hurt and you're going to lose your second best player in free agency for nothing. The Clippers just built into a dome. They're not going to fill that place up much this season, especially when it gets to the back half of the season and they're struggling and they can't seem to get wins, and God forbid James Harden gets hurt. They're completely screwed if that happens. So if I was a Clippers fan, I would not be particularly excited about the season, and I don't really know where they go from here. I could go do a rebuild with them on 2K, but I don't even know where I would really start, because if you don't have your own picks, and let alone if Kawhi's not going to play this season, nightmare scenario, and the Clippers fall all the way to like 13th, 14th seed, and then guess who owns their pick? It's the fucking Oklahoma City Thunder. It always is. It's always OKC, because Sam Presti is just playing my league while everyone else is playing an entirely different general manager game. But whatever, man. Clippers fans, I'm hoping the best for you. Clippers management, stop signing guys that are pieces of shit. And Kawhi Leonard, I hope to see you on a basketball court sometime this season, sometime soon. But I'm not exactly confident about it. Anyway, I'm back. Y'all take care. Have a good one.